Hello and welcome to the Iron Maiden. My name is Abby and today I'm going to show you how I've been attacking Marlynn, Treasure Hunter, who is of course new to CC. Because Marlynn is so new, her deck lists are probably going to change significantly, or at least their sideboard plans are going to change significantly. So this Vynnset guide is only really a starting point and we'll need to adapt alongside them. That being said, I found success with what we're doing in this sideboard, so let's see. There's two major types of Marlynn builds right now, and that would be Cannon or Death Dealer. Once Death Dealer Living Legends, this is likely to become maybe Red Spine, the new other bow, but basically there's Big Blue and Aggro. The Cannon build is very disruptive. It's a lot like Azalea, or maybe more like a Guardian like Betsy, because it has giant attacks with overpower and runs usually 36, more than 30 blues. And because it runs so many arrows, it has lots of 3 blocks as well. The aggro deck, on the other hand, is very aggressive and has lots of go again. So it's a lot like Lexi in a way. Multiple arrows every single turn, but they're not very disruptive. So most of them just have go again, or some of the on hits get them a card or get them a little bit more damage. There's very few blues in most of these deck lists, but they do have lots of arrows, so lots of 3 blocks. The weaknesses of each of these builds. The Cannon build cannot load. The Cannon itself doesn't arsenal an arrow, so it has to rely on the gold or the card draw to activate Marlynn's ability. This means it has pretty clunky hands occasionally, and without some gold on board, it is liable to just draw up and pass, very occasionally. On the other hand, the aggro deck never does that, but it doesn't have many blues to block Arcane with. It mostly sends raw damage with very few on-hits, which you can either ignore or block efficiently. And this deck list should not be able to fatigue Vynnset, which means you can just play for efficiency instead of set up big turns. And then the game plans, like I said, we need to set up and burst against the Harpoon because they have so many blues and 3 blocks. We need to watch our opponent's blocking pattern so that we can react. If they want to race, we can race. If they want to block, we can set up. And then we need to try and arsenal D-reacts so that we can stop either a key Harpoon from hitting, or so we can block out their gold bait hook and destroy their arm piece. Whereas in the aggro deck, it's just an aggro race. We need to block a lot, and we don't need to do anything special or fancy, unless, of course, we get put on the back foot really bad, or if they decide they'll try and fatigue. It should be like any other explosive aggro deck. So think something like Zan or Katsu, where they have mediocre turns that are consistent, and then they have big spike turns. So card draw is really key to Marlynn's power. It's kind of key to all 3 of the High Seas heroes' power, which is going to make Chains of Mephedes a very powerful card in this new meta, I think. So for Marlynn, she has access to gold, of course, which she often uses to draw cards. She rarely uses it for her own ability. And she has 3 of a kind, the most powerful card draw in Classic Constructed since all the other ones got banned. So shutting down this card draw from both sources is the best way to brick Marlynn's turn, especially in Cannon, because they haven't got a bow that loads. So sometimes that will stop them entirely, and sometimes that will just make their turn a bit worse. So playing this Chain of Mephedes lets you set up your turn safely, because it will really decrease their next turn. You also get to banish and play chains, which means you can block with the other 3 cards in your hand, and you get 2 turns of relative safety, and you get to keep your Rune Champ. So Chains is really a card that when you see it, you can take that tempo off, you can freely pass, and then come back more powerfully later. The other thing you need to be really aware of is Codex. Of course, Marlynn is a ranger. She will be playing Codex of Frailty. It's good in both builds. So it's obviously been known to be one of the best cards in Classic Constructed, but also it's particularly powerful against Vynnset. And that's because it forces you to arsenal an attack from graveyard, and the only attacks in most Vynnset decks are Runegate cards, which, when they're in arsenal, are quite awful. So we really don't want to be forced to arsenal a bad card and then discard a card from hand. And the only way to actually avoid doing this is to keep an arsenal. So this is an important thing to know against all rangers and assassins. But we're talking about it here because obviously Marlynn will play this card too. Alright, what are we going to do in order to win this? Enough for what they're going to do. Because there's two big Marlynn decks, one that is very big and slow, and one that is very aggressive and low to the ground, sideboarding can be a little bit strange or awkward. Revel and Succumb are pretty good hedges, because Succumb can always give go again. It can sometimes disrupt the slowing blocking decks, while Revel, even into aggro, is okay. It can let you do double rune gates, or it can just be a 0 for 4. So these two cards are pretty good in either matchup, including the one that they're not really in the deck for. While both the D-Reacts, both Reduce to Rune Chant and Haunting Rendition, they're not both D-Reacts, are pretty good into either build. You can't Arsenal Haunting Rendition, which definitely makes it worse, because we want to be saving this for stopping a big turn against cannon, but it's still just as good against aggro because you're always going to get either 4 value or 2 value in your rune chant. And then we have to pretend that they're always going to be on cannon. If we sideboard as if they are going to be aggro build, and we don't bring something like Revel, or we don't bring Reduce to Rune Chance, and we just try and kill them, and then they fatigue us, we won't have any real way to win. So it's important, just like a lot of these warrior matchups, that you hedge as if they are going to fatigue you, and then play reactively to what they do. The other one thing I wanted to say is, which chess piece do you play? I've been having a bit of a question about this. So both Carapace and Tunic do pretty good things in the matchup. Against Cannon Marlynn, they can fatigue you. So Tunic is really good because you can activate your creepers, you can set up these bigger turns. But both aggro and cannon can also shoot you with these big arrows. So Carapace will be really helpful for stopping the overpower or for just blocking breakpoints. So I think the answer is watch your Marlynn opponents, and then if they start to be more fatiguing, you might want to start bringing Tunic into your next games. But if they start to be more aggro, or you see more aggressive builds and less cannon builds, you might want to bring Carapace in. This is going to be something that changes over time, even in the next few years, depending on how long Marlynn and Vynnset stay both in CC. We'll always be dancing between these two, I think. Alright, so now let's get the gameplay video. We haven't done one of these in a while. So you can see I'm going to sideboard my D-Reacts, my Chains, I'm bringing Succumb, and then thinking about what to build, what to bring. I choose Haunting Rendition. This is a really hard sideboard. Like I said, I want to be bringing the Revel, but I wasn't sure. We go with this. They start strong with a 3 of a kind. This is, I don't know, maybe wrong, because they could arsenal this and have an excellent turn next turn. But let's see what they do. They load a blue harpoon, which is still pretty good. Oops. They pay for their cannon and they fire. I decide here it's not worth armoring to prevent that 1 damage. And that's because this red fin harpoon will see a yellow and therefore not trigger. So I'm okay with that, taking 1 damage. I get my 1 rune chant going into next turn, so I'm pretty happy. We get to guarantee play a Malefic here. This is a hand that can work if I crack Vexing, but it's probably not worth it, so instead... Oh, sorry, yeah. I remember here, I think this is maybe wrong, but I wanted to test if my opponent was going to be a blocking deck or if they were going to try and race me. I think sacrificing Quill Hand here is not worth it, but that's what I did. So they're going to use their Trench to get their spare resource, and then AB with it. They don't seem to have a blue in hand, or they want to keep their blue for later. So you can see this build's playing 0 for 4 arrows, which implies that they are somewhere between aggro and cannon. They give up a lot of their armor here to prevent me from getting extra rune chants. We draw chains, so this hand I can either attack or I can play the chains and pass. Decide to play the chains and pass because obviously they blocked out my last turn. It means they're pretty happy to block out in the future. I haven't got an Arsenal, so it's possible they won't be able to Arsenal. I can also pay 1 life to chains since it's a shadow non-attack, and that will allow me to play Funeral Rune as an instant, which I think is worth it because we want this Dirge in Arsenal. Drawing 4 attacks is okay here. Probably would have preferred to have drawn a Go Again source. They can't do anything with this turn because of chains, so they just pass. Can't decide what to banish. Yes, I want to remove the counter. Just send Deathly to get some of the cards out of their hand, hopefully. So we're seeing what they want to block with. We can Creeper, Dirge, send another attack. So that would be pretty alright. We're going to do that. This is extra good because, of course, chains no longer will do anything. So we might as well sacrifice it to the Dirge. And then we can send 10 damage that will get over. And then, because we will have dealt damage, we also get to go into next turn with a Rune Chant because of the Deathly Whale that's still on the chain. So they take a big hit. Excuse me. We just do a simple banish play to Rune Chants. We've got our Overpower here. So we're hoping that they will not block. We can play Succumb, of course. But I think it's better to go for damage here because, of course, they are looking to block out very often. So I think if they're choosing not to block out, the turn will be obviously very strong, but it's worth just getting more damage in. Okay, they finally get their first real turn of the game that they're going to try and send at me. They activate Marlynn to make the harpoon, and then they activate the hook. They're using Tipple, discarding the gold harpoon, so they have their gold, which means I cannot destroy the hook this turn. They've already made a gold. Could block this out to stop them from making another gold, but don't think it's really worth giving up my armor for that. Really, on this turn, I'm just wanting to play one of these dirges and one of the attacks, and then arsenal the other dirge. So I'm just watching to see if they will have an arsenal next turn, because if they will, I will keep the widespread destruction. I block with this one because I want to banish Arsenal Pass, I believe, is what I end up doing. Should have blocked with Creepers here. because they won't have an arsenal either side, I'll just leave it there so they have less of a chance of arsenaling in the future turns, or they're less likely to want to. They do their tipple play again, which is a pretty interesting thing you can do. On these tipple attacks, it's worth considering using Face Purgatory because it will make them discard. You often can't get face value out of their arrows because, of course, their arrows will have overpower. So it's often worth it to think about doing it on any of their little go again attacks, or just using face as a 2-block. If you have that headpiece that draws a card if your opponent has drawn 2, that's probably better. Want to protect this dirge if possible, considering if it's worth it here. Just getting our face value out of stopping them getting an arsenal, and it gets a frailty, so that's pretty good. Draw a malefic, so that's even better. Now they don't have an arsenal for us to destroy here, but we can still get our damage value, or we can pass and set up again. Drawing a chains here is pretty good. We're still quite ahead on life, so we can block out and try and get this again. They get another tipple play. These tipples are being really strong for them, actually. Decide to block because we just want to stop the additional gold. They hit the 3 of a kind, which is pretty good. I wish they hit that 1 turn later, and the chains would have destroyed it. And then they send their big 8 power harpoon. Now this harpoon, assuming we block with the Haunting Rendition, can't take any cards from us. So we can decide if we'd rather make a rune chant or have 2 more life. Decide I want a rune chant instead, because it's going to push 4 over instead of 3, which is very likely to kill their arsenal with the widespread destruction, especially since we will have overpower as well. We also get the go again here, which means, of course, we can play chains afterwards, which means we both get the damage and the chains. They decide to use Trench, which means that they only get 1 value out of their arsenal, which is, you know, better than the 3 or 4 it could have been. Try to block out, try to block out. It's got overpower, so they probably can't block all of it. They'll have to take some. Even though Marlynn decks do block pretty well, none of them really play D-Reacts or block cards. The only ones that they might play is Return Fire, which is pretty good but adds some clunk to the deck. Or they might play Take Cover or some of the traps, but I find that's pretty rare. Okay, play chains. We could have also, of course, done Dirge into Destruction, but chains here is pretty good. It gives me 2 turns. They can't do anything with those 2 cards. They IP again. It's a really good way to win these games, is making your opponent pass over and over again because they just can't do anything. We have double Malefic and a Deathly Whale. So we can do a Deathly Whale into the Destruction as long as they take damage. If they don't take damage, then we get to swing Flail, which right now is a very likely to hit. They've used all the armor they like to block with. If they block with Trench, they won't have Arcane Barrier. So fairly likely to hit. They do take damage, so we do have now the option of doing Destruction or Flail. We are looking to arsenal this Phantom Wraith, which is not a great arsenal, but like I've said before, it is worth keeping anything in arsenal so that Codex doesn't get you. Yep, they're taking a bit more damage here. Destruction doesn't have any text, but it is worth a lot of damage. As you can see, they go down to 5. We are very far ahead. but finishing the game will be the hard part. They didn't read Chains of Mephedis, and that honestly will lose them this game, so they just end their turn. They could have actually played Codex, wouldn't have really done anything, but they could have. We can play this Phantom Wraith from Arsenal, and then Arsenal reduce the rune chant. We'll have the rune chance to do it. This turn's okay. Opponent has effectively given up, as you would probably expect after an embarrassing mistake. Do I think that 3 of a kind would have actually won them the game or got them any further to winning? No. And that's because, of course, the chains was there anyway. So the best they could have done is blocked with it for a bit more, but it had overpower anyway. They could have blocked the second attack. They would have had 3 more life, but not have had a turn. So we're taking some setup here because we have a massive life lead, and we need to finish them, which is the hard part. Just like any of these decks that have lots of blues, like Ira or Warriors, finishing the game is the hard part. Getting them down to single digits is often not very hard. So they do their tipple play, which means once again they get to keep their hook. Every time they do this, they are getting quite a lot of value. We have all these spare attacks, we might as well block with one. We're probably looking to set up this turn again, or send the Annihilation to buy a full turn. We do want, of course, to have space. They play that Conqueror, so we can block out here and keep the D-React. I think that's worth it because this hand was fairly awful anyway. We could have, of course, send Annihilation here to disrupt them, or we can set up. So we're just going to keep the setup, roll it into next turn. We draw a much, much better hand. So all we'd have to do now is hope that they don't completely destroy this hand. They send their tipple, they do their discard thing. They Arsenal the one that gets non-attacks. So now I'm looking at my hand and thinking, well, I've got these 2 good non-attacks I want to keep, but I've also got my D-React. I can block 7, 8 if I block with my armor, so that's pretty alright. Thinking about playing Cull here to try and knock out the resources from their hand, because of course if they have a blue, they'll only go up to 5 resources, which means that they won't be able to also swing. They won't also be able to activate cannon and harpoon me. So I'm going to go with that and see if I can just get them to shoot only 6, which would be way, way better. And of course, it uses one of the non-attacks in my hand, which is key because then they won't be able to make me discard one. They quickly undo because they must have banished the wrong thing. That's okay. So then they can't swing both this turn unless they want to crack some gold and risk it for the blue, which they do get, unfortunately. So they get to send their big 10 overpower. We're not going to use our D-React or Carapace. We are going to use D-React. I think we should have saved the D-React because, of course, we could have used it in a future turn to try and stop an on-hit. But I guess one more enchant is also worth quite a lot. So now we're looking like we've got 3 blood debt, which is a bit too much. So we're going to send the Annihilation for 12 total, make a rune chant for next turn, hopefully get them off attacking us so that we can come back with a strong turn. They are preventing with a Codex, which is always good when your opponent has a 2-block. They get their 1 block out of their quiver, which is fine. They get another 2-block in the form of Tipple. So even though we only send 12 here, we get a little bit lucky and they have to take 1 of the damage, which is something. We get them 1 point closer to death. And we carry our rune chant into next turn. This is a very interesting hand that just works on the skin of its teeth. We can pay life, go double cull into big attack. Considered here, of course, using Grimoire so I can Eloquence trick, but we don't need it. We can just take 6 block out of their hand, which means that my attack that is for 9 has to kill them. Unless they've got some sort of blue into D-react, that's it. So, pretty interesting game, I think. There was mistakes on both sides, I believe, as this matchup's very new. But I think, in general, Marlynn is significantly harder of a matchup than most people expected it would be because of all the blues she plays. And that's kind of similar for the other high seas heroes as well, which I'll get around to making gameplay videos for. Where are we here? So, thank you for watching. I've got my comics on the left, my Twitter's up there if you want to follow it, and more importantly, the Discord link in the description below, where me and all of the Vynnset followers, or the Vynnset cultists, chat about new things, strategies. Is a good place to be. Have a good day, and be good, friends.